NASCAR responds to the team's request for a new injunction to keep their charters, and they added some new information we hadn't previously heard. NASCAR also says that a number of different motorsport entities have expressed interest in purchasing charters, even those outside of NASCAR. Plus, it sounds like San Diego is going to happen, with maybe even an announcement next week. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. NASCAR had until 5 p.m. on Wednesday to respond to the team's request for a new preliminary injunction, and they responded with information we didn't previously already know and clapped back harder than that Trev's Chirps guys did this past weekend at Sonoma. The content's never really been for me. Maybe it's for some people. Oh, Austin Hill, you look like a grown-up Bobby Hill. We know. He's heard that before. I don't think that's really any news to him there, but I guess keep going and doing the chirps if people enjoy them. But for NASCAR, their response to the teams was kind of what we've already talked about. And basically, NASCAR said that the teams don't have charters. In fact, they never had charters this year. Because the teams never signed the charter agreement, they never had charters. So NASCAR can't give them back something that, well, they don't have right now. NASCAR continues to stake their claim that those charters now belong to NASCAR, because the teams did not sign that charter agreement. Now, we talked about that the other day, and I think NASCAR has legal grounds for making that claim and also for turning around and wanting to sell them if they so choose to do that, which NASCAR did say they will not sell these charters while the teams are seeking their preliminary injunction. They won't sell them over that period until the judge makes a decision. But NASCAR did say that a number of motorsport entities essentially have expressed interest in purchasing charters, those in IndyCar, the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and other motorsport series. So that is definitely interesting. We'll get to that in the next segment because I think there's a couple players in that space. There. NASCAR also went on to say that there's no credible threat that the team's drivers and or sponsors will leave mid-season or even in the next 2 weeks if they lose their charter status. So that was one of the main points when the teams requested that first preliminary injunction, is that they were afraid they were going to lose their drivers. Tyler Reddick has an exit clause in his contract that says if he's not in a charter car, then he can go seek other opportunities. The teams freaked out about that, and they're like, see, look, it's going to cause irreparable harm to us. It's also going to cause financial hardship to us as well if we lose a sponsor, if we lose a driver. And the court, amongst other things, was like, okay, you can have this preliminary injunction. NASCAR is now saying that none of that is true. They don't think it's actually going to happen. We'll wait and see how that plays out there. We also went on to read what one of the things the teams want out of this. And Michael Jordan, when he was deposed, said that what they're seeking are permanent charters. Now, that is something that we heard through the entire negotiating process. That's something that the RTA, the Race Team Alliance, pushed really hard for, and ultimately they were never going to get. NASCAR said that they're willing to do charter deals on a media deal by media deal basis. So right now they have a 7-year media deal, charter deals for 7 years. NASCAR is willing to do another 7 years on top of that. So a 14-year charter deal is essentially what they're working with right now. The teams, 2311 Racing for our Motorsport, they want permanent charters because I get the argument from their side of things, like, hey, if we're going to spend $45 million on a charter, we'd like to know that it's going to be around for a while, because NASCAR can still pull the plug on this charter deal at the end of this current agreement and go back to just everybody being an open car, and everybody has lost money essentially at that point, outside of like a Rick Hendrick or, Joe Gibbs that had already had their charters back in 2016 when the whole charter agreement started. So there's some validity to the ask for permanent charters. Now, NASCAR, of course, doesn't want to do that because that would include giving up some of their power, and that's something they don't want to do. And now that's going to open up a lot of people being like, see, it's a monopoly, it's a monopoly, it's a monopoly. The teams are going to have to prove that in court. NASCAR is going to have to disprove that point in court, and we'll see how all that plays out in December. There's an argument to be made either way in that. So I guess it kind of depends on who can argue it the best and what your reading of kind of the law is in this situation. We also saw, that NASCAR said that the teams have filed their paperwork to compete as open cars for the remainder of the year. So if NASCAR does in fact pull those charters away, even though the teams technically have never had the charters, then they're already signed up, ready to go as open teams. One of the remaining things is probably going to be the amount of money that NASCAR has paid these teams so far this year. They've been paid as chartered teams. NASCAR seemingly would like that money back at some point, and then probably, redistribute it to the actual charter teams, because before the season, NASCAR had sent out a payout structure to the other 32 charter teams to be like, hey, this is going to be your increased payout this year, since we won't have those other, or 30 charter teams, sorry, not 32, 30 other charter teams, to show them what their payout would be and going forward. So For now, that's kind of where it stands. We'll have to wait for the judge to make his decision. Whether that comes on Thursday, on Friday, we'll have to wait and see. But it seemingly is getting to a point where NASCAR is either going to pull those charters and force them to race as open cars, or they're going to get a new preliminary injunction, keep their charters through the end of the year, which is going to make NASCAR mad because they still contend that you never signed the charter agreement. And the point of having a charter is contingent on signing that agreement. And I see a lot of comments, especially on TikTok and on Twitter, of people being like, oh, you're spending $45 million per charter, $40 million per charter, but you don't actually own anything. But that's always been the whole charter system. Everybody knew that if you bought the charter, you had to sign the charter agreement, and that's where the value came from there. And right now, the teams aren't doing that. So it's very much up in the air in what way the judge is going to rule in this case and try to decide. Obviously, the Fourth Circuit of Appeals Court overturning that original injunction. So everything that they had argued for that original one, you can kind of go ahead and just toss that out the window. You're going to have to come to the table with more. And the teams say they have more. We'll have to wait and see if they do, in fact, have more. But for now, that's sort of what their argument is. And now we're in a waiting pattern to see when the next episode of NASCAR is going to happen. So part of NASCAR's statement they put out to the court on Wednesday was the fact that there is a lot of interest, substantial interest in their words, in purchasing those 6 charters. Now, 2 of those charters are going to remain in question a little bit, the 2 that came over from Stewart-Haas Racing last year, because SHR did in fact sign the charter agreement. And then when the injunction happened, then the transfer of those charters happened to the 2 sides. But the teams never signed that charter agreement. Those charters are in fact signed for, which brings back to my other point in the previous segment. I guess the payout structure technically would be 32 because 2 of those charters are signed for. But who would they go to? Do they go back to Haas factory team? Do they go to NASCAR? I think there's got a little bit of unwinding to happen there. But in terms of what's available, we'll just go ahead for the sake of this and assume that there's 6 charters available. NASCAR says that substantial interest, that coming from IndyCar teams, NASCAR Xfinity Series teams, and other motorsport companies. So let's start off with the Xfinity Series, because right now I think there's a very logical team out there. Who's the powerhouse in the Xfinity Series that does not have a charter as it currently stands? That would be Junior Motorsports. Now, what are the prices of these charters? Very much up in the air. We have no idea what their price is going to be set at, but if it's around what we've seen, then it makes me think it's not them. I mean, yeah, they have interest, right? Like they've always had interest. But if you're still talking about $25, $30 million a charter, I don't see where that interest is going to come from there. Then outside of that, who else realistically, has the funds to be able to purchase charters and go cup racing, everything like that? In terms of Xfinity Series teams, it's kind of small, because you have your major teams, which already have cup affiliations, your colleagues, RCR, JGR, JRM is the only one realistically that it could be looking for a charter there. If you said, oh, there's some truck series teams interested, or a truck series team, I believe Tricon could be thrust into that. They certainly have the money behind the scenes there to make all of that happen if they wanted to buy 1, 2, 3, even at that. So I think there's a level of interest certainly there. I don't think the Siegs, AM Racing, anybody else sort of in that realm would be interested, but crazier things have happened for sure. Like maybe they will in fact try to make a play for it there. Sam Hunt just realistically building up his racing empire. It'd be crazy, but maybe, especially if you have the right investor that comes along. I think the IndyCar one is the more interesting aspect of this for me, because we know with Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan losing that BMW GTP program, one of the things that Bobby Rahal said in the story on Racer was, maybe we'll go NASCAR Truck Series racing. Not really sure if that's the place for us. Maybe go NASCAR Cup Series racing. I think they have the money. They can certainly find the funds to be able to purchase a charter, maybe 2 charters if they wanted to do that, and expand their racing footprint, especially if you have somebody like Honda that's eventually going to come into the series. It could make some, logistical sense for them to be able or want to get in on it as well. Then you have, like Ed Carpenter Racing. They just recently got a big influx of money to that team with a new co-owner. Maybe that's something that they look at. Meyer Shank. Jim Meyer's got a lot of money that's floating around over there. That's another possibility that you have to at least explore. What if Chip Ganassi just decides to come back, buy 2 charters, and get back in the game? I don't think that's going to happen, but, I guess crazier things have happened. And of course, I think the one that a lot of people have wanted to happen or want to see happen is McLaren buying charters and coming into NASCAR. Obviously, they're a factory Chevy team on the IndyCar side of things. Maybe they can parlay that into something on the NASCAR side of things. They have a strong relationship with Hendrick Motorsports thanks to that double attempt with Kyle Larson. So maybe that's something that they could look at. And then other motorsport companies, I guess you can throw other names out there. Like, would a Pratt and Miller be interested? I don't think so, but like, hey, who knows? They're a factory Corvette team and everything like that. Or you're looking at teams like maybe in WEC and IMSA, maybe over Formula One team, somebody wants to get involved. Who knows? There appears to be enough interest, though, that NASCAR is chomping at the bit to sell these 6 charters, which, again, is going to be really interesting and chaotic if it does, in fact, happen. And last but not least, let's talk about San Diego, because everybody in NASCAR is going to have their Anchorman memes and content ready to go next year, because according to Kelly Crandall over at Racer.com, there could be an announcement as soon as next week for the NASCAR street race in San Diego. So some more news has come out about that street race, a potential street race in San Diego, and it sounds like that it could possibly be on Coronado, which is a peninsula right there next to San Diego. It's also where the naval base is as well. And obviously NASCAR does a lot with the troops, a lot with the armed forces. So maybe that's something that they look at and possibly do around there. But for me, Coronado would be a weird spot to do it because it's a lot of residential. And I don't necessarily know if people are going to want their residential streets turned into a racetrack for a weekend. At the same time, I don't think you can do it on a naval base. I just don't think logistically that makes a lot of sense. I guess we have talked about doing crazier things over the last couple of weeks in terms of events on government property. So who knows? Maybe it is something. But Coronado is an odd one for me, especially if you're doing it out towards the naval base. If you're doing it down back towards where it connects to like mainland California, then maybe. But again, that's a pretty narrow area right there as well. And I just don't really know what the layout would actually look like. At the same time, I would actually kind of really love it to be in downtown San Diego, like right there on the, the harbor front or whatever you want to call it, because I think that would be more entertaining and more accessible to people staying in hotels and everything like that. Because if you got to drive up Coronado to get there or take the ferry across, that kind of like limits the accessibility and what made Chicago so great. But it does appear that we're going to get this announcement potentially next week. If not, it definitely sounds like it's going to happen now. The bigger question coming out of that will be whether or not NASCAR is going to continue on the Chicago street race. Could we possibly have 2 street races on the schedule next year? It sounds like Mexico might be off the schedule just for 2026. One of the guys over at The Athletic, the not Jeff Gluck one, mentioned that they could be gone for 2026 just because of scheduling conflicts, but then come back in 2027. And Chicago appears to be pretty keen on bringing NASCAR back. They see the benefit of it. They obviously want to move it off 4th of July weekend, which I think we all can understand that to an extent. So we'll see kind of how that plays out there. But going to San Diego, a presence back in Southern California is a big thing. And for NASCAR, that's where they want to be. And for San Diego, they're going to get a big time event as well. And for the fans, hey, listen, wherever it's at in San Diego, I'm probably going to make the trip out there because I think that the street race in Chicago is great. I'd love to see them do it in another city and see how all of that goes. And it's an exciting time, right, to be a NASCAR fan. The schedule diversity is better than it has ever been at this point. And no, we don't have too many road courses as it stands. So let me know in the comments what you thought about NASCAR's response. Who do you think could possibly be in line to buy those charters? And San Diego, what are your thoughts on that? Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BreakHardBlog.